The alarm screamed through the bridge of the obsidian eye. Captain G. Trask's 4 eyes snapped open, his scales rippling with alarm. In 12 years of commanding survey vessels for the Valorian Empire, he had never heard that particular sound. It meant the sensors had found something that shouldn't exist. "Report," J. Trask commanded, rising from his chair. His claws clicked against the metal deck as he moved toward the central display. Lieutenant Mora, a young officer with pale blue skin, worked frantically at her console. "Captain, we have an object. Bearing 327 Mark 15. It's moving. Everything moves in space, Lieutenant. Be specific." "Sir, it's moving at 0.3 light speed. Through empty space. Through the outer veil." G. Trask felt his blood chill. The outer veil was a region between star systems where nothing existed. No planets, no asteroids, no dust. Just empty void. Yet something was out there, moving faster than most Imperial ships could manage. "Power signature?" he asked. Mora shook her head. "None, sir. No heat bloom either. No propulsion signature. No electromagnetic emissions. It's just moving. That was impossible." Everything that moved in space left some trace. Heat, radiation, exhaust. The laws of physics demanded it. Yet here was something defying those laws. "Show me," J. Trask said. The main screen flickered to life. At first, J. Trask saw nothing but darkness and distant stars. Then Mora enhanced the image. There against the black was a shape. It caught starlight and reflected it in strange ways, like crystal or glass. The object was long and sleek, elegant in a way that made J. Trask's military training seem crude. "Size?" he asked. "Approximately 800 meters long, Captain. 50 meters at the widest point. A ship, then, or something like a ship. But whose?" The Valorian Empire had cataloged 40,000 intelligent species across known space over 12,000 years of expansion. J. Trask knew the profiles of every major civilization's vessels. This matched none of them. Attempt contact. All frequencies. The communications officer, a 3-armed Kellian named Surix, worked his station. After a moment, he looked up. "No response, Captain. The object isn't even acknowledging our hails. It's like it doesn't know we're here. Or doesn't care," J. Trask muttered. He made a decision that would change everything. "Helm, intercept course. Bring us alongside, sir." Mora's voice carried a note of fear. "Regulations state that unidentified vessels are to be reported to Central Command and observed from a distance until—" "I know the regulations, Lieutenant. I'm choosing to interpret them creatively. If this is a first contact situation, we need information immediately. Set the course." The obsidian eye changed direction, its powerful engines pushing it toward the mysterious object. As they drew closer, the sensors returned more impossible data. The hull material didn't match anything in the Empire's databases. Dating scans failed completely, returning errors instead of numbers. Mass readings fluctuated as if the object existed in multiple states at once. "Captain," Surix said, his voice tight, "I'm picking up something. Not a communication. More like a pulse, very faint. On speakers." A sound filled the bridge. Slow, rhythmic, steady. It took J. Trask a moment to recognize what it reminded him of. A heartbeat. The ship was producing a sound like a heartbeat. "That's not a mechanical sound," Mora whispered. "That's organic." They came alongside the object at last. Up close, it was beautiful. The hull was covered in symbols. Mathematical equations, geometric patterns, things that looked almost like writing but weren't any language in the Imperial archives. The material seemed to shift between solid and liquid, between metal and crystal depending on how the light hit it. "Scan for life signs," J. Trask ordered. "Negative, Captain. No life signs. No power cores. No energy readings at all. But it's still moving. Still alive somehow." J. Trask stared at the vessel. Every instinct told him this was significant. Maybe the most significant discovery in Imperial history. "Prepare a boarding team. Full environmental suits and weapons. We're going inside." "Captain, we don't know how to breach the hull. Our scans can't even identify the material." "Then we'll try the traditional method. Cutting torches." The boarding team assembled in the airlock. J. Trask insisted on leading them personally. They crossed the void in magnetic boots carrying equipment designed to cut through anything. The mysterious vessel didn't react to their approach. It simply continued on its path, indifferent to the tiny creatures crawling across its surface. The chief engineer positioned the plasma torch against the hull and activated it. The torch burned at temperatures that could melt starship armor. It should have cut through easily. Nothing happened. The hull didn't even warm up. They tried laser cutters, molecular disruptors, sonic hammers. Nothing worked. The vessel's surface seemed to absorb every attack without effect. "Sir, this is impossible," the engineer said. "We can't breach it." Trask felt frustration rising. They had come so far, discovered something so important, and now they were stopped by a door they couldn't open. He placed his gloved hand against the hull, feeling the faint vibration of that heartbeat pulse. Then the ship opened. There was no warning. No sound. The hull simply flowed aside like water, revealing a doorway that hadn't existed a moment before. Light spilled out from inside, warm and golden. The heartbeat sound grew louder. The boarding team froze. Trask stared into the opening. He could see a corridor beyond, lined with more of those strange symbols. The passage curved away into darkness. "It opened for us," Mora's voice came through the radio, tight with fear. "Captain, the ship opened itself." "I see that, Lieutenant. That means something's inside. Something that knew we were here." Trask checked his weapon and stepped forward. "Then let's go meet it." He crossed the threshold into the unknown, and behind him, the Empire's understanding of the universe began to crumble. The Imperial Science Director at headquarters orbited the capital world like a steel moon. Inside its most secure laboratory, Director Kunshala stared at the impossible vessel through reinforced glass. 3 weeks had passed since the Obsidian Eye brought it here. 3 weeks of failures and frustrations. Kunshala was a Valorian like Captain Trask, but where the captain was methodical, she was brilliant and knew it. She had decoded 15 ancient civilizations and cataloged 2,000 species. Nothing in the galaxy confused her for long, until now. "Run the analysis again," she ordered her team. A dozen scientists from a dozen different species worked around the vessel. They had tried every test, every scan, every procedure known to Imperial science. The results never made sense. "Director," said Dr. Venn, a patient researcher with gray fur and 6 fingers. "We've run the analysis 47 times. The results don't change. The hull material doesn't exist in our databases. The dating methods return errors, and the mathematical symbols on the surface predate every known civilization by millions of years." "Impossible," Kunshala snapped. "The Empire has explored this galaxy for 12,000 years. We've cataloged 40,000 species. If something this advanced existed, we would have found traces of it." "Perhaps we did," Venn said quietly. "Perhaps we just didn't recognize what we were seeing." Kunshala's scales rippled with irritation, but before she could respond, alarms began sounding. "Not emergency alarms. Discovery alarms, Director." A young technician's voice cracked with excitement. "The vessel's internal doors are opening. We have access to the interior chambers." Everyone rushed to the monitors. Deep inside the mysterious ship, sealed doors had opened for the first time. The cameras showed what lay beyond. Cryogenic chambers lined the walls. Dozens of them. All empty but perfectly preserved. Each chamber was sized for a creature roughly 2 meters tall, bipedal with spaces for 2 arms and 2 legs. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal sat a cube that glowed with soft blue light. "That's a data archive," Kunshala breathed. "Get it now, carefully." The retrieval team entered wearing full protective gear. They approached the cube like it might explode. When nothing happened, they carefully lifted it from the pedestal. The moment they did, the entire ship vibrated once, hard, like a final breath. Back in the laboratory, the Empire's greatest minds gathered around the cube. It sat on a sterile table, glowing, waiting. Kunshala reached out with a scanner. "It's broadcasting," she said. "Pure mathematics, a universal language. It wants to be read." "Remarkable," Venn whispered. "Whoever created this assumed other species would find it. They designed it to communicate with anyone, regardless of their language or culture. It took 6 hours to decode the mathematical message. When the translation finally appeared on the screens, the laboratory fell silent. We are humanity. 2 words, simple, direct, and completely unknown. No species in the Empire's vast catalog called themselves humanity. No ancient civilization used that name. It was new and old and impossible. The message continued. If you found this, we succeeded. Or we failed. Either way, remember us. We were here. We mattered. We reached for the stars when our sun died, and we did not go quietly. Kunshala read the words 3 times. Her mind, trained to be skeptical and precise, struggled with the implications. A species unknown to the Empire. A species advanced enough to create vessels that defied known physics. A species whose son had died. Continue decoding, she ordered. I want everything this archive contains. Over the next days, the archive revealed its secrets. It contained astronomical amounts of data, music that made hardened soldiers weep, art that showed alien yet familiar beauty, literature that spoke of love, loss, hope, and defiance, scientific knowledge that advanced imperial physics by decades, and a warning. The silence comes, the archive said. We detected it first as a wave of darkness consuming the outer edges of our galaxy. Stars went dark. Civilizations vanished. We studied it for centuries but never understood it fully. We only knew it couldn't be stopped. When we realized it would reach our sun within 10,000 years, we made a choice. We refused to die quietly. We built ships, 50 of them, each aimed at a different galaxy, each carrying the seeds of humanity, each a bottle thrown into the cosmic ocean hoping someone would find it. Kunshala felt something she rarely experienced. Fear. Not for herself, but for the Empire, for all the civilizations that thought themselves safe and eternal. Where was their sun? She asked. Where did they come from? The archive displayed star charts. Ancient constellations from 2 million years ago. The scientists worked to match them against current stellar positions. When they found the answer, several researchers gasped. Andromeda, Venn said slowly. They came from the Andromeda galaxy, 2.4 million light-years away. The laboratory erupted in disbelief. Travel between galaxies was theoretically possible, but incredibly difficult. The Empire used wormholes and exotic matter to bend space. Even then, intergalactic travel was considered too expensive and dangerous for anything but emergency missions. Yet, these humans had done it. Not with wormholes or exotic matter. The archive showed their method clearly. Generation ships, vessels designed to travel for millions of years, with populations living, breeding, and dying aboard them for hundreds of thousands of generations. They did it the primitive way, Kunshala whispered. They just flew for millions of years. That's insane. That's desperate, Venn corrected, and determined. A junior scientist, a young xenoanthropologist named Serix, had been quiet during the discussions. She was small even for her species, the Keltine, with pale skin and large eyes adapted for reading in low light. Now she spoke up. Director, may I access the cultural database? The music and literature? Kunshala waved dismissively. If you want. The important data is the scientific and navigational information. That was her first mistake. Serix downloaded the human cultural files to her personal terminal and began reading. She spent days immersed in human philosophy, human art, human stories. She read about creatures called dogs that humans loved, about something called pizza that they argued over, about wars and peace, tyrants and heroes, despair and hope. She read poetry about defying death, stories about fighting when defeat was certain, philosophy about making meaning in a meaningless universe. And slowly, Serix began to understand something the others missed. The humans weren't special because of their technology. They were special because they refused to accept the end. Every piece of their culture screamed the same message. We will not go quietly into the night. While Serix read, the Empire's High Council met in secret. They discussed the discovery. Many wanted it classified, destroyed. The existence of a civilization more advanced than the Empire, from another galaxy, contradicted everything the Empire taught its citizens. But they couldn't destroy it. Because the ship had activated more systems, and those systems began broadcasting. The broadcast began at midnight Imperial Standard Time. Every sensor array within 100 light-years received it simultaneously. The human archive ship wasn't just a time capsule. It was a beacon, designed to activate when examined by intelligent life. Serix was in her quarters reading human poetry when her terminal lit up with emergency alerts. She rushed to the laboratory to find chaos. The ship was projecting a hologram and nobody could shut it off. A human woman appeared in the center of the lab. She was tall by human standards, with dark skin and gray hair tied back in a practical style. Her eyes held exhaustion and determination in equal measure. She wore a uniform covered in symbols that matched the ship's hull. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, the hologram said. I'm the mission commander of the colony ship Persephone. If you're seeing this, it means you found our vessel. It means we reached another galaxy. And it means either we succeeded in our mission or we died trying. The hologram flickered. The scientists realized they were watching a recording made almost 2 million years ago. I'm making this recording as our ship approaches the Milky Way galaxy, Sarah Chen continued. We've been traveling for 1.8 million years. 50,000 generations of humans have lived and died aboard this ship. I'm the descendant of the original crew, so far removed from Earth that I've only seen my homeworld in pictures. But I carry their mission in my heart. She paused, and even across the vast gulf of time, her emotion was visible. Our sun died. We knew it was coming. We had centuries to prepare, but preparation means nothing against a dying star. We evacuated Earth. We built habitats in space. We survived. But then the silence came. The hologram changed, showing astronomical data, a wave of darkness spreading through a galaxy, consuming everything in its path. We don't know what it is, Sarah said. Some scientists think it's a natural phenomenon. Others believe it's a weapon left behind by an ancient civilization. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it destroys everything. Stars go dark, planets freeze, life ends. We watched it consume our galaxy for 3,000 years. We knew we couldn't stop it. We knew we couldn't outrun it. The hologram showed Sarah's face again. She was crying now, but her voice remained steady. So we refused to let humanity die. We built 50 ships. Generation ships designed to travel for millions of years if necessary. We aimed them at 50 different galaxies. We filled them with everything that makes us human. Our art, our music, our science, our stories, our DNA. We sent copies of ourselves into the void, hoping that at least one ship would reach a safe harbor. Kunshala watched the recording with growing horror. An entire galaxy consumed, 50 ships fleeing into the night. The scale of the tragedy was incomprehensible. If you're watching this, Sarah continued, one of two things is true. Either the silence consumed us, and you're all that remains of humanity's legacy, or we survived. We found worlds in your galaxy. We settled. We adapted. We became part of your history. Either way, we're family now. You found us. You learned about us. That makes you the inheritors of our dream. The hologram changed again, showing coordinates, star systems marked in the Milky Way galaxy, dozens of them. These are the systems we identified as potentially habitable, Sarah said. If we survived, we settled some of them. If we died, our ships might still be drifting toward them. I'm asking you, whoever you are, whatever you are, to help us, find us, or if we're gone, continue what we started. Don't let humanity's final message be silence. Let it be hope. The recording ended. The laboratory remained quiet for a long moment. Then Sarek spoke. The coordinates. We need to check those coordinates. Kunshala nodded slowly. I'll send survey teams to— No, Sarek interrupted. In Valorian culture, interrupting a superior was unthinkable. Everyone stared at her. Director, with respect, if you report this to the High Council, they'll classify it. They'll send military teams who will destroy any evidence they find. You know they will. They're already trying to suppress the broadcast. How dare you, Kunshala began. She's right, Ven said quietly. The Council fears this discovery. They fear what it means for Imperial authority. If there's evidence that humans actually survived and settled in our galaxy, it changes everything. Kunshala's scales rippled. She was being asked to choose between her loyalty to the Empire and her loyalty to truth. It wasn't an easy choice. Sarex made it for her. That night, she stole a fast courier ship from the military dock. She had studied the coordinates from Sarah's recording and chosen one. A system that wasn't on any Imperial charts. A system the humans had designated with a simple name. Cradle. By the time security realized she was gone, Sarex was already in hyperspace. The journey took 3 days. Sarex spent them reading everything the human archive contained. She learned about a concept called defiance, about fighting even when victory was impossible, about making your own meaning in an uncaring universe. She learned about a human named Galileo, who defied authority to speak truth, about another named Mandela who refused to surrender his dignity, about millions of ordinary humans who lived and loved and dreamed in the face of inevitable death. By the time she reached the cradle system, Sarex understood. Humanity's gift wasn't their technology, it was their attitude. Their refusal to accept that some things couldn't be changed. The system had a yellow sun and 7 planets. The 3rd planet registered as habitable. As Sarex approached, her sensors lit up with readings. Artificial structures on the surface. Satellites in orbit, long dead but still present. This was it. Humans had been here. She landed near what her scans identified as a major city. The ship touched down in what might have been a park once. Now it was overgrown with alien plants that had evolved from whatever humans brought with them. Sarek stepped out wearing an environmental suit. The air was breathable but different from her homeworld. She walked through streets lined with buildings that were clearly designed by intelligent minds. The architecture was strange but beautiful. Curved walls, open spaces, everything built to a scale for bipedal creatures about 2 meters tall. But the city was empty. No bodies, no signs of disaster, just abandonment. She found what looked like a library in the city center. The door opened easily, revealing rooms filled with preserved data terminals. Sarek activated one, and to her amazement, it still worked. The terminal displayed text in the same mathematical language the archive ship used. It told a story humans had settled here. They named the world New Terra. They built cities and farms. They had children who had never seen Earth but carried its memory. The colony thrived for 500,000 years. 500,000 years of human civilization on this world. Art and music and science and love. Births and deaths and weddings and discoveries. An entire branch of humanity living their lives under an alien sun. Then, 50,000 years ago, something changed. The records became excited, hopeful. Humans had achieved something remarkable. They had evolved. Not physically, but mentally. They had learned to exist beyond physical form. The last entry was dated 50,000 years ago. "We are leaving," it said, "not because we must, but because we can. We have become something new. Something beyond flesh and fear. But we will not abandon our legacy. Before we go, we are seeding 1,000 worlds with our DNA. Let humanity spread. Let it mix with whatever life exists in this galaxy. Let our descendants, physical and spiritual, inherit the stars. We were human. Now we are more, but we will never forget what we were." Sarek stood in the silent library, understanding flooding through her. The humans hadn't died. They had transcended, and before leaving, they had ensured their genetic legacy would spread throughout the galaxy, which meant, "They're in us," she whispered. "Humans are in all of us." That's when the Imperial ships arrived to arrest her. And that's when the world's ancient defenses woke up. The Imperial warships dropped out of hyperspace with weapons charged. Captain J. Trask commanded the lead vessel. He had orders to retrieve Sarek and secure the site. The High Council wanted this discovery contained before it spread further. "Hail the surface," J. Trask ordered. "Tell Dr. Sarek she's under arrest for theft of Imperial property and unauthorized exploration of restricted space." Before his communications officer could transmit, the planet's surface lit up. Energy signatures appeared across the abandoned city. Ancient satellites in orbit suddenly powered on, and from deep underground, defense systems that had slept for 50,000 years came awake. "Captain," his tactical officer shouted, "we're being targeted. Multiple lock-ons, energy weapons of unknown type. From where? The planet's abandoned. From everywhere, sir. The entire city is a weapon." On the surface, Sarek watched in awe as the human city transformed. Buildings that seemed decorative revealed hidden purposes. The curved walls were sensor arrays. The open spaces were targeting platforms. The beautiful architecture was functional in ways the Empire's brutal military designs never imagined. A voice spoke from every surface. It used the same mathematical language as the archive. Defensive protocols engaged. "This site is protected. Authorized personnel only. Please identify yourself." Sarek realized the system was speaking to her. "I'm Dr. Sarek. I'm a researcher. I came to learn about humanity." "Scanning," the voice said. "Analysis complete. You carry human genetic markers. Percentage 12.3%. Authorization granted. Welcome home, cousin." The word hit Sarek like a physical blow. She was part human. Her species, the Kelthine, carried human DNA, which meant humans had reached her world 500,000 years ago and mixed with the local life. Above the planet, J. Trask faced a terrible choice. His weapons were useless against the defense system. Any attack would trigger a response that would destroy his entire fleet. But if he retreated, he'd face court-martial. "Sir," his science officer said, "I'm receiving data from the surface. The defense system is broadcasting. It's sending information to every ship in the fleet." "What kind of information?" "Genetic analysis, sir." "Of us, of our crew, sir. It says 63% of our crew members have human DNA markers in their genetic code." The bridge fell silent. Trask looked at his own claws, his scales, his 4 eyes. Human, impossible. Yet the data streaming onto his console didn't lie. Deep in his genetic code, buried under millions of years of evolution, were sequences that matched the human archive. "Stand down," he ordered. "All ships stand down. Open a channel to the surface." Moments later, Sarex's face appeared on the main screen. She stood in the human library surrounded by active terminals. "Captain," she said, "I know you came to arrest me, but you need to see this first." She transmitted data from the library, files showing human settlement patterns across the galaxy, genetic records proving that humans had seeded thousands of worlds, analysis showing that most modern species in the Milky Way carried human DNA. "They didn't conquer," Sarex explained. "They didn't invade. They just existed alongside whatever life they found. They shared DNA with local species. They helped evolution along. Over 500,000 years, human genes spread throughout the galaxy. Not through force. Through cooperation. Through breeding with other species. Through the simple act of existing and mixing with the universe around them." Kunshala's face appeared on another screen. She had been listening from the science directorate. "That's impossible. We would have known. Our genetic surveys would have found this. Would they?" Sarex challenged. "When's the last time the Empire looked for genetic similarities between species? We catalog differences. We classify and separate. We never thought to look for connections because the Empire's philosophy is based on the uniqueness of each species. But humans thought differently. They saw connection everywhere. They looked for family in everything they met. Back at the science directorate, teams were frantically running new genetic analyses. The results came back quickly. Too quickly. As if the answer had always been there, waiting for someone to ask the right question. 60% of cataloged species showed human genetic markers. The percentage varied. Some species were 3% human. Others were 20%. But the connection was undeniable. Venn studied the data with growing wonder. The Valorians, 12% human DNA. The Kelthine, 12.3%. The Surians, 9%. Even the Kellians, who we thought evolved completely independently, show 5% human markers. "This changes everything," Kunshala whispered. "The Empire is built on the idea that we Valorians are the superior species, that we have the right to lead because of our advanced evolution. But if we're part human, then humans are our ancestors," Venn finished, "which means they were more advanced than us. Which means the Empire's entire philosophical foundation is wrong." On New Terra, Sarex walked through the library, transmitting everything she found. The human colony had kept detailed records, stories of first contact with native species, accounts of cooperation and friendship, records of humans falling in love with aliens and having children together. She found personal journals written by humans 500,000 years ago. One entry, written by a woman named Catherine, moved Sarex to tears. "Today I met a Kelthine for the first time. They're beautiful. Pale skin and huge eyes, and so curious about everything. We don't speak the same language yet, but we're learning. I taught them about music. They taught me about patience. We're so different, but there's something familiar in their eyes, like we're both looking at the universe and seeing wonder. I think we're going to be friends. I think our children are going to be family." Sarex was Keltine, which meant Catherine's prediction had come true. Hundreds of thousands of years later, a descendant of that friendship stood reading Catherine's words. The broadcasts from New Terra spread across the Empire faster than anyone could stop them. Every species with access to the network received the data. The truth couldn't be contained. Humans had come to the Milky Way 2 million years ago, fleeing the silence. They had settled thousands of worlds. They had lived, adapted, evolved, and eventually transcended physical form. But before leaving, they had ensured their genetic legacy would continue, not through conquest. Through family. The Empire's philosophers struggled to process the implications. For 12,000 years they had taught that each species was separate and distinct, that the Valorians ruled because they were naturally superior. Now they learned that separation was an illusion, that every species in the Empire was connected through ancient human DNA. They were all family, distant cousins, separated by millions of years of evolution, but family nonetheless. And the most disturbing implication of all, if humans had achieved transcendence, if they had evolved beyond physical form, while the Empire's species remained trapped in flesh, Then perhaps the Empire wasn't as advanced as it believed. Perhaps humanity's children had forgotten the lessons their ancestors tried to teach. On New Terra, the defense systems continued broadcasting. They sent out a signal that reached every corner of the galaxy, a message in pure mathematics that every species could understand. We are humanity. We were here. We mattered. We didn't survive unchanged. We became something new. But our legacy isn't our form. It's our spirit. The urge to explore, to create, to refuse extinction. That's in you now. All of you. You're all our children. Make us proud. Sarek stood in the library reading journals written by people dead for 500,000 years, and felt their presence, not as ghosts, as inheritance. Their DNA was in her cells. Their curiosity was in her mind. Their refusal to accept easy answers was in her heart. She was human. Not entirely, but enough. And so was everyone else. The Empire fractured slowly like ice under a rising sun. The revelation about human DNA didn't cause immediate revolution. Instead, it created something more profound. Doubt. For 12,000 years, the Valorian Empire had taught its citizens that they were separate, that each species had its place in a hierarchy with Valorians at the top. That order and control were necessary to prevent chaos. Now faced with evidence that all species shared ancient ancestry, those teachings seemed hollow. Kunshala sat in her office at the Science Directorate, surrounded by data she couldn't deny. She had spent 3 days trying to find errors in the genetic analysis. There were none. The truth was simple and undeniable. Humans had seeded life throughout the galaxy. Not deliberately, not as part of some grand plan, but simply by existing, by living alongside other species, by falling in love, having children, and letting their DNA mix with whatever they found. It's elegant, Ven said, standing beside her desk. They didn't conquer. They didn't impose. They just participated in life and let evolution do the rest. It's chaos, Kunshala replied. The Empire maintains order by establishing clear hierarchies. If every species is connected, if we're all related, then what justifies Valorian rule? Perhaps nothing ever did. Kunshala's scales rippled. As a scientist, she had to acknowledge the truth. As a Valorian, she felt her worldview collapsing. What do we do? We could lie, Ven suggested. Suppress the data. Arrest everyone who knows. Destroy the human sites. Could we, though? The broadcasts have reached every corner of the Empire. Billions of beings have seen the evidence. You can't unring that bell. Ven nodded. Then we adapt. Like the humans did. On New Terra, Sarek had become the unofficial ambassador for humanity's legacy. Scientists from dozens of species arrived daily, wanting to study the ancient colony. The High Council had tried to order her arrest, but Captain J-Trask refused to carry out the command. I'm not arresting someone for discovering the truth, he had told his superiors. If that's treason, then charge me too. His crew had supported him unanimously. Word spread through the Imperial military. Ship after ship declared that they would not act against the human sites. The Empire's authority crumbled not through violence, but through simple refusal. Sarek gave tours of the library, showing visitors the human records. She read them Catherine's journal, the story of first contact between humans and Kelthine. She showed them art created by humans 500,000 years ago, music that still moved listeners to tears, philosophy that challenged the Empire's rigid hierarchies. The most popular exhibit was a simple video, preserved perfectly by human technology. It showed a human child, perhaps 5 years old, playing with an alien child of unknown species. They chased each other through a garden, laughing in different languages but clearly understanding each other perfectly. This is what they wanted, Sarek explained to visitors. Not empire, not conquest, just connection, just family. The young species of the Empire embraced the revelation most enthusiastically. For generations they had been taught they were inferior, that their ideas mattered less than those of older species. Now they learned that all species shared common ancestry, that creativity and curiosity were human traits and everyone carried them. Art flourished. Young artists began creating works that mixed traditional forms with human influences. Musicians experimented with harmonies based on human musical theory. Writers told stories about individuals defying authority to seek truth, just as Sarek had done. The Empire's philosophers called it a crisis. The young called it an awakening. 3 months after the discovery, the High Council convened to make a decision. They could continue trying to suppress the truth and risk civil war, or they could adapt. Kunshala was summoned to speak. She stood before the council, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the Empire, and told them what her research had revealed. "The genetic evidence is undeniable," she said. 60% of our species carry human DNA. But it's more than genetics. The humans left records of their philosophy, their values, their way of thinking, and when I compare those records to the rebellious movements currently sweeping the Empire, the correlation is striking. "You're saying the rebellions are genetic?" asked a council member. "No, I'm saying they're cultural. The humans valued individual expression, scientific curiosity unfettered by authority, and the right to question leadership. Those values were passed down not just through DNA but through cultural influence. Every species that interacted with humans absorbed some of their philosophy. And over 500,000 years, those ideas spread and evolved alongside our genetics. So the humans infected us," another council member said, "with their chaos. Or they gifted us," Kunshala replied, "with their freedom. It depends on your perspective." The debate raged for days. Finally, the council reached a decision. They couldn't stop the truth. They couldn't suppress the awakening. So they would change. The Empire announced the Human Heritage Initiative. Syrinx was appointed as its director, much to her shock. Her first act was to pardon herself for stealing the courier ship. Her second was to establish a new directive for the Empire. Instead of conquest and control, the Empire would explore and preserve. Instead of forcing species into hierarchies, they would celebrate diversity. Instead of suppressing individual expression, they would encourage it. "We honor our human ancestors," Syrinx announced in her first official broadcast, "by continuing what they started. They reached for the stars when their sun died. They refused to surrender to extinction. They believed that existence itself was worth celebrating. That's our inheritance. That's what we carry in our DNA and our souls." Not everyone accepted the changes. Some species rejected the idea that they carried human DNA. Some Valorians insisted on their natural superiority. But they were the minority. Most citizens of the Empire felt something awaken inside them when they learned about humanity. A sense of connection. A feeling that the universe was less lonely than they'd believed. The original human archive ship was enshrined as a monument on the capital world. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to place their hands on its hull and feel the heartbeat pulse that still echoed from its core. But the most significant change came from space itself. The Empire's long-range sensors, now searching actively for human signatures, detected more ships entering the galaxy. Archive vessels like the first, still traveling after millions of years, still broadcasting their messages of hope. "They're still coming," Ven told Syrinx as they stood before a display showing the new contacts. "After 2 million years, the ships are still arriving." 50 ships, Syrinx said softly. "Aimed at 50 galaxies. We found evidence that 12 made it. That's billions of kilometers of dark space traveled. Millions of years of hoping someone would hear them. And we did. We heard them. On the edges of the galaxy, in the cold void between stars, other empires were finding their own human archive ships. Other species were learning about the beings who had crossed the cosmic ocean, carrying nothing but hope and determination. The humans had died, or transcended, or scattered so completely that they became something new. But their message survived. Their legacy spread not through conquest, through connection. Syrinx stood in the library on New Terra one last time before returning to her new duties. She read Catherine's journal again. That simple entry about meeting a Kelthine and hoping their children would be family. "We are family," Syrinx whispered. "You were right, Catherine. We're all family now." Above the planet, the stars shone cold and distant. But between them, invisible to the naked eye, more human ships traveled. Still moving, still hoping, still refusing to let the darkness win. And in the hearts of 1 trillion beings across the galaxy, something human lived. The urge to explore, the refusal to surrender. The belief that existence, however brief, mattered. The humans had sent 50 ships into the void. They had hoped one would survive. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Not because their ship survived, but because their spirit did. And as long as anyone in the galaxy looked at the stars and felt wonder, as long as anyone refused to accept impossible answers, as long as anyone chose to hope instead of despair, humanity would never truly die. They would live on, in the DNA of their distant descendants, in the philosophy they had shared, in the simple, stubborn refusal to go quietly into the night, The humans had sent a message across millions of years and millions of light years. The galaxy had finally heard it. And the answer, echoing back across the void, was simple. We remember. We hear you. We are your children. And we will make you proud.